Hey everybody, Scott Spreitzer here. Welcome to WagerTalk TV, joined by Marco D'Angelo and Ralph Michaels, and we're talking East Regional in this particular video. Villanova, obviously the favorite to come out of this region. Maybe we'll talk and give our picks for the team that we think is going to come out of the East in just a little bit. But let's take a look at a couple of games from a Vegas perspective, and I want to start with a Thursday game. Late game on Thursday, Virginia Tech laying 2 to Bama, the total 141.5. We know that Dante Hall is still listed as questionable for Alabama. Ralph, I'm looking at this the night before we shot these videos and into the morning, and I'm seeing at William Hill 98% of the handle on Virginia Tech in this particular game. I've seen some juice on that 2 for Virginia Tech, but there hasn't been a lot of upward movement. So, 98% of what? What's the total money on this game? Because it really hasn't moved.
Well, Alabama had that last-second win against A&M, or they're not even in. If they don't win that A&M game, they're past that. So, to me, they're playing on free money, and while Virginia Tech, last year we always thought of Virginia Tech as such an up-tempo team. They really slowed it down. They started playing some good defense. I think they went under each of their last 10 games to finish the year. So, it's not the VT team we've been thinking about. But, on the VT side, we do have 5 players averaging double digits. But, to me, I like the competition in the SEC. I like the way Alabama got there, hung in tough, played well down the stretch in the tournament, and you have the best player on the court in Colin Sexton, to me, and if you have that kind of player controlling the ball, it's going to keep you in the game. And again, I would lean to Bama in this one in my mind.
Marco, I was going to say that, the big issue all season long, they only went, 19 and 14, but the big issue all season long was people questioning Avery Johnson's substitution patterns and methods. Didn't hurt him in the SEC tournament, though.
It didn't, but I look at this and, I'm going to disagree with Ralph, and maybe we'll have a lunchtime bet here. I'm not impressed with this Alabama team. Down the stretch, they were 2-6 straight up, 3-5 against the spread. But what concerns me with them is offensively, they were too inconsistent at times. Over the last 5 games of the season, they shot 37% or less in 3 of those 5 games. That's not something you want to do facing this Virginia Tech team. This team plays great defense. Over the last 6 games, Virginia Tech held teams to 42% or less against them over the last 6 games of the season. And this is a Virginia Tech team that can frustrate you. As you said, they can slow it down. And a lot of the teams in the ACC like to go up and down the floor. You look at what they did. They have a resume where they beat all 3 of the big guns from the ACC this year. They have a win over Duke, a win over North Carolina, and they handed Virginia one of their 2 losses. I like this Virginia Tech team.
Alabama quite average away from home and neutral, and boy, their numbers just don't look like a Big Dance squad outside of the home floor. So I'll break the tie. I'll say I got Virginia Tech and lay the bucket here. Ralph's
one thing I want to bring up in this game is, you talk SEC and ACC, and all of a sudden you think ACC is superior.
Sure.
Alabama played the number 10 schedule this year. Virginia Tech played the number 49. So all those old things we think about with the strength of conferences, they're switched this year.
That's a good point. Butler and Arkansas, they're going to face off on Friday in the East, 3:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Butler a 1.5-point favorite. This game, by the way, in Detroit, total 151.5. Marco, Butler finished losing 3 of 4, 6 of 9. Not Oklahoma Sooner-like, but definitely didn't play their best basketball down the stretch.
They didn't. Scott, but if you look at who they played down the stretch, they played a lot of the big guns.
Sure.
They played the Xaviers, they played the Villanovas, who happened to be 2 number 1 seeds. A lot of debate about one of those number 1 seeds with Xavier, but still they're a number 1 seed. I look at Arkansas, and I know they finished on an 8-3 run, 7-3-1 against the spread. But for me, only 2 of those wins were marquee wins. They beat Auburn at home, and then they beat Florida in one of the conference tournament games. The rest of those wins during that stretch were the second half of the SEC. And to me, this year, and I don't know how you guys feel, I know the SEC's, always been strong, but to me, I thought the SEC this year was top heavy, and then it was from the middle of the pack down, they were mediocre. And I just was not impressed with what Arkansas did, the whole body of work. Butler's a team that's been tournament tested before. They played in a tough conference. The Big East, they didn't have as many teams come out of the Big East, but the teams that did come out were high, high seeds. I like Butler in this one. I'll go with them. I know they looked ugly down the stretch.
Ralph, I was going to say about Butler, I mean, we got to give, we got to factor it in, obviously, that they played Villanova and, Providence and Xavier and Creighton and all that kind of stuff. But they don't defend well. I mean, they allow their opponents to make about 45% of their shots. They're 308th in the nation defending the tray. Arkansas is one of the best shooting teams in the nation.
And you have to remember Butler, first-year head coach this year again. So they're going through the proximity to Detroit helps them. The Indy fans will have the short drive. But, this is the game I've gone back and forth. Obviously, you have the 10-seed Butler favored over the 7-seed just because what they've done and been there and done that. But it's a game I've gone back and forth. I'm looking at the under in this game. Both teams rely on the three. Both teams, I think, you get to these sometimes cavernous arenas that you're not used to playing. Those threes are tough to hit in first-round games. So I'm looking at under 151.5.
Little note on this one from William Hill's numbers as we headed into these videos. Butler had received they had received a little bit more than half the tickets on Butler. Over 70% of the betting handle was on the Butler Bulldogs in this one. A little bit wider gap than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be closer to 50-50 as far as the money's concerned. West Region is coming up next. And guys, I wanted to say real quickly about the East, though, is that if you look at the East region.
You got one more.
We had one more game we're going to talk about, didn't we? Yeah, that's why I'm the host. Final game we're talking about in the East is West Virginia against Murray State. I was testing Marco. This game is at 4 p.m. Eastern time in San Diego. West Virginia 10, down to 9.5 in some shops, guys, and they opened a little bit higher than that. If I'm a coach, I don't want to draw the winner of that Murray State-Belmont game. It is the Racers of this one. First thing you look at in this particular game is, does Murray State protect possessions? That's what you got to do when you're playing against West Virginia, and they do. Ralph, they've got a 1.25 assist to turnover ratio. They average just 11 turnovers per game, talking about Murray, and about the same away from home. Not bad away from home. Do you agree with this early movement in the week on Murray State?
Well, I think it's anti-West Virginia money. They got knocked out by SF Austin 2 years ago, got taken to the wire against Bucknell. So I think people think Bob Hubbins has trouble in these first-round games with Press Virginia. So, to me, I think Virginia, the difference this year is they have some offensive scores, and they're not the same team in the past. So I actually, I have West Virginia winning by 10 or 11 in this game. I think it'll be a game that everything will rely on the first 5 minutes. I think it's a great live betting game. If Murray State is completely unweathered by the press early, I think West Virginia continues to run it. If they show in the first 5 minutes they can handle the press, then I think they can stay close throughout the game.
And Marco, I tell you, West Virginia doesn't shoot well away from home. They just don't. They give up about 45% shooting. They played in the ultra tough, as they're calling it, Big 12. And well, outside of Oklahoma State, this is a situation where the committee really did like the Big 12. But in this particular game, I think, Ralph makes a good point. We're going to find out early on if Murray State can handle what West Virginia brings as far as defensive pressure. If they can do that, they got a shot to win this game, and I can understand why the line came down a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you got to question a little bit, what's the mental state of West Virginia? The fact that they played Kansas, they got to the championship game, got to play Kansas for the third time. In the first two games, they played them really well, but come up empty. And then Kansas just took it to them in the championship game. It was close for a while, but then Kansas pulled away in the second half. But given what they've done the last couple of years, I think West Virginia is going to be ready coming out of the gate. And I'm going to do a little different wager here. I'm going to go with West Virginia first half. Because what we've seen so many times this year, and we actually, when I did a show with Dave, one of the days that I was in on the Las Vegas Sports Line show, we talked about a game with West Virginia and Kentucky. And we took West Virginia for the first half. Because you had that younger team for Kentucky that, how are they going to handle that press? And they didn't handle it well. And West Virginia had that big halftime lead. Well, boy, in the second half, Kentucky come rolling back on them. Because if you do crack this press on West Virginia, so often you get very easy baskets on the other end. I'm going West Virginia first half. I think Murray State, as much as they try to prepare for it, you can't do it till you see it in the game. And I think they'll struggle a little bit early on.
Murray State with a true Frosh point guard, Jamon as well. So
no doubt
they played
about
well against Belmont. No turnovers in that championship game, but the Virginia press will be a little different. West Virginia press.
Absolutely. All right, guys, who's coming out of the East? I think we're all of the same team here. I mean, Boy, it's just tough to buck Villanova, isn't it, coming out of the East?
Yeah. You know, there's times that you try to get that sleeper, but you know what? Don't. If the best team is the best team, don't try to find a sleeper. You know, we see the number one team get there more. Usually, two out of every 4 seeds in the finals is the one over the last 10 years.
Sure.
So if you like the one, play the one.
It's Villanova.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, a real quick note on these first 2 games, first weekend of games, first 2 rounds. And this worked for me real well to at least have me in the money when it came to the Elite 8, the Final Four. As far as if you're just goofing around with brackets, you know, your local neighborhood bar, whatever, some friends, advance all the number 1s, all the number 2s to the first round. And a lot of times you advance just every higher rated, higher seeded team through those first couple of games. And you're going to miss out on the occasional 12-5 upset, things like that. Those teams don't tend to go to the Final Four. So if you're trying to be cute and you eliminate a 2 seed or a 3 seed, you're taking a real good shot of losing a team that can get you points by winning game after game throughout the tourney, as opposed to that, you know, that kind of a sexy pick that might win early, but doesn't usually win 2 or 3 games in a row. And that's just bracket stuff. None of us are big into brackets, but it's kind of fun to do with your friends or at your local bar. Don't forget, you can save $10 this weekend. All you got to do is hit Madness10 as your coupon code. Madness10, save $10 on any package. And don't forget, if you like what you see, hit the thumbs up button. Also remember to subscribe. We'll be back with the West Region. Stick around.